All right. Leor Grebler, welcome. And thank you for making the time. It is a Sunday. We're recording this on a Sunday. I think it's past noon over there, right? Where you are
Yeah,
at.
it's past noon. It's the start of the week here.
It's the start of the week. Is it the first day of the
Yeah,
week?
first day of the week. It's our Monday. So
Oh, it's your Monday. Okay, that's
yeah.
interesting. You're at Israel. And so Sunday is the first day of the week. Back home, which is Algeria, our weekend is, I think, Thursday and Friday.
Oh, okay.
And so Saturday, Saturday is the first day. And so you can see how complicated it is when somebody is trying to do transactions between Israel, Algeria, and the US. Like they have like Monday and Tuesday.
I I don't
Because
know when.
Wednesday afternoon
Yeah,
is like over here, Friday, like people are like winding down over, in Algeria. And over there, what is it? Is it
it's
Thursday?
Friday and Saturday or
So Thursday
the
afternoon,
weekend. Yeah,
people are winding down, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But it's kind of weird because it's kind of a 6 day week as well. Because some schools still operate on Fridays, so it's
Okay.
really the one day is Saturday, kind of from Friday night till Saturday night is pretty much
Okay.
off. But
Okay.
it's weird. I haven't adjusted. I don't know when the weekend is or is it anymore.
In any case, for us entrepreneurs, it just doesn't make sense. The structuring of the week, every day is a day where we do things.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'm going to start by talking to you about something really important, I think, in the annals of the evolution of voice and speech, which was the launch of the Ubi. I think it was in 2012. Was that when the
That's right.
Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Yeah,
2012. Yeah.
yeah. And I do remember exactly the moment when the Ubi became part of my life because I don't know if I told you this story, but I was with my family. I was lying in the beach in Atlantic City.
Okay.
I think it was in the summer. Yeah, summer, right? Probably July. The beach in Atlantic City is awful. So, uh, but any beach, I enjoy beaches. Anyway, so I was lying down. I think I had the iPhone. I had my an iPhone with me. And I was reading a book, and then of course, I was checking my email, and I see this email coming in. It had a video, and so I looked at the video and said, holy smokes, this is wonderful, right? I knew it was an important moment because it was a new way of interacting using your voice. And up to that point, really the two main ways was you call a phone number, telephony, right? And engage, or it was starting to emerge, is voice on mobile apps. The Siri had launched, I think, a year earlier, right? So voice was becoming a thing, but this was the first one really where it was clear that it was taking voice seriously as an interface as opposed to as a feature, right? So now at the time you can use your Siri to do things within the visual touch interface, right? But Ubi, it was a daring move, which was like, okay, pure voice. What can we do with it?
Hmm.
Anyway, so I want what I would love is for the folks to hear it from the main man's mouth, right? The story behind the story behind the story of the Ubi. So tell us first of all, how did the idea come about? And then tell us about the evolution up to the point where you guys turned into a Kickstarter and beyond.
Well, it definitely didn't start as the Ubi. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself and the other co-founders.
Hmm.
So we were in 2011, 2012. We were all working together at a really interesting company that was selling teaching equipment to universities. So
Hmm.
we got to go around North America. I think I was doing 100,000 miles a year easily flying just within North America, visiting universities, Berkeley, Stanford, um, and seeing kind of all of the cutting edge stuff that they were working on, and it was just an amazing experience. So we were always very interested in robotics and AI and unmanned vehicles and kind of all the other kind of cool things that were being worked on. And we would meet. We were based in Toronto then, and go out for lunch and talk about the future and everything that was going on. And we were reading Kevin Kelly and Ray Kurzweil and all these other um, tech authors, and you know, just looking at what was ahead. And that time iPhone had come out only a couple of years before. Android was starting to come out. There were all these websites. The Kickstarter had come out, so there was tons of like kind of really exciting things that were going on. And we thought, we probably have some ideas, right? We're exposed to all this tech stuff. I'm sure there's something interesting that we could potentially work on. And we started on a couple of different ideas. Never Google salsa clock. Whatever you do, just don't don't Google it. But one idea was this app for haptic feedback for learning the timing of salsa dancing using an iPhone and vibration. And we actually had put that on Kickstarter. And Kickstarter does a good job of bearing failures, so it's hard to find it. But we ended up getting two backers after a 60-day campaign. One of them was the other co-founder and and myself, and no one else. Zero other, not even my mother. In fact, she didn't even know about it because I was too embarrassed to tell her about it. So but we learned a lot from that experience. We learned that you can't just put something on Kickstarter and expect it to take off. There clearly has to be something behind it. We learned about, we researched a lot more about, what a successful project looks like. And also things that were more appealing. And so we started to think about some different ideas. And one of them was a Wi-Fi connected plug. So at that time there weren't, now, I mean, they're everywhere, but at the time there weren't. And we came about it, from different angles. So, one of my co-founders was really into energy, energy savings. Like, what if we could measure the energy and people, can shut things off, avoid phantom power.
Mhm.
At the time, at the time I had another motivation, which was, I was keep observing a Sabbath at that point, and every week, I wouldn't use electricity, I wouldn't use electronic devices, but I would set up timers for things so I could have lights turn on and off. And I always had the issue where I would have to, rush before sundown on Friday to turn these timers on and off. And the programmable timers would always run out of batteries, and it would just be a nightmare. The mechanical ones were always really difficult, and they didn't give you many options, and you had to set them. So I thought, what if we could have a programmable timer that's Wi-Fi
Mhm.
connected? You just plug it in, and it takes its schedule from the cloud, or not the cloud, to the internet at that point,
Mhm.
and you can set up that way. So we had different motivations. So we worked on this concept for some time, and in the end, in probably June 2012, we were getting pretty close to launching it on Kickstarter. So we even shot a Kickstarter video, the unseen Kickstarter video, where we interviewed our motivations behind it, and what was this thing could do, and it was actually going to be called Peach Plug. So we had we used the Tim Ferriss technique of putting a bunch of AdWords up with different name ideas and seeing which
Mhm.
one generated the most click-throughs and
Nice.
interest. So we researched it completely, and we one day, particularly end of June, we had woken up at, like, the time you wake up, like, really like 4 a.m. We came into the office. We shot a video with the rest of the video, and we were getting really close. And 9 a.m. we were sitting at our desks, and we're working away. And sure enough, get an alert. Like, you got an alert that there was a Kickstarter project, and it was a Wi-Fi plug. And we're like, we lost it. We were betting a lot on first mover advantage on Kickstarter, that's kind of the big
Mhm.
deal.
Mhm.
Um, and so we knew we had to pivot to something else, and we went back and to the drawing board, and we're thinking about what else could we do with this thing. And we started thinking about different things that we could put on it. Like what if we could put a speaker on it? And this thing could, play music back, or it could alert you of different things. And there was so many kind of things that you could do as a result of putting a speaker on it, functionality that came out of it. And then we said, what if we were to add a microphone? And I was like, whoa, like, and then like the tree of functionality just like blossomed, and it had, there's so many, like, then it's like, okay, like this kind of makes sense for us to do. And so we spent some, we developed our concept a little bit further. We worked more on a Kickstarter video, and we this time we knew that things didn't come on their own when we put a list together of journalists we were going to reach out to, and other projects that we wanted to partner with, and one of them being Smart Things, which was just about to launch around that time. So this was like the era of internet connected devices going on Kickstarter. There were tons of other. Doorbot was another one that eventually became Ring. The Forum Labs had was putting out their 3D printer. It was like that 2012, 2013 was just a breakthrough year for hardware devices, internet connected hardware devices. So we got everything lined up. We had our campaign ready to go, and I think it was August 12th, 2012. So at midnight, we launched. I wrote one of the contacts was Chris Anderson, who at the time was the editor of Wired magazine, and he started to tweet about it, and because it was still, it was still Pacific time, and it started to take off. And there's one order, and there's another order, and there. By the time we reached our goal, I think within the first day, and we ended up getting 6 times our goal by the end of the campaign. And that was probably one of the most exciting things that I've gone through is running, when a Kickstarter campaign takes off, and we're getting tons of media interest, and lots of stories we're covering, we're covering us, and we try to kind of push it through as much as we can. It was a real slog to, like, after the first it's just adrenaline, and then you're like, just the first, I was up for the first I think until 8 a.m. or something like that, just working away, sending out press releases, and about the launch of it. And finally I went to sleep, and I think my wife walked in at like 10 a.m. just like, hey, did you know about your your Kickstarter campaign? I'm like, what's going on? Like, thought something was wrong, but turned out that it had doubled, or since even I'd gone to bed. So it was pretty incredible. Then after a while, just like day 3, day 4, it's like, okay, like, why are we getting an order every minute? Then it slowed down, and then as soon as we partnered with other projects, it peaked again, and towards the end of it, it picked up a little bit more, and we had to work out, what type of incentives are we going to put on. So that was, up until the launch of the Kickstarter project.
Let's pause there, because I think there's a lot to the story, and I just want to make sure that sort of slow it down so we can savor it, so to speak, right? Okay. I think the market validation was probably the most important thing there, that there is an interest in this thing, which is people talking to a thing, right? Far field. And again, it was totally novel. So I immediately saw that there was massive potential for this thing, right? Was that the first thing that you sort of like absorbed, like that there is actually a market for this, and the interest not only from the media, because it's very hard to get media's interest, right? I mean, they're always looking for stories, but there's plenty of stories, so they have to wade through things, and I think they rely probably on their instinct as far as, hey, this probably is something very interesting to write about, because it's unique, and it gives them a new way of talking about technology. Was that like the market validation? Was that the thing that sort of got you excited, or it was? I mean, did you sit back and say, okay, clearly there is a market here, or it was just part of the excitement?
Do you know? It probably was many months afterwards that we started to really look at the market issue. Before that, we had not come in with the idea that we were creating a business. Absolutely not. This was going to be a Kickstarter project, and we were loving our jobs. We, with if this, if there's something, a little extra income on the side, that's great. But more importantly, was to do something really cool, and that was kind of our motivation. It was very naive, and we were kind of pure in the sense that we weren't like there's a lot of other products that have come up that are they were just using Kickstarter as a way of marketing. For us, this is truly like we want to build this. We would want this type of thing in our lives. We want this type of future, and we weren't thinking about product market fit or market validation or all of these other things.
Yep.
In fact, the more we tried to use our Kickstarter project as a way of demonstrating that we had market validation for it, the more pushback we got. And this was when we went out and actually started to raise funds for it.
What does that
There's a
mean?
million.
In what
Yeah.
sense? Who was pushing back against what?
So a lot of angel investors and a lot of VCs were pushing back. They were saying, you know what, and this was, this is the case. I mean, VCs are maybe they're used to they try to find nice ways of saying no. But the biggest thing was yeah, it's a Kickstarter crowd. This appeals to Kickstarter. It's maybe the early adopters that are buying it now, but who's the real market for it? Maybe it's not going to take off after that. So there was all sorts of they're trying to like kind of poke holes in that idea that there was market validation. So when we finally got around to thinking about it, we were basically being negged into thinking that we've it's not so great what we were doing. It's
Well, just so to do the audience that angel angel investors are, I think angels are they interested in themselves, right? So they have money, and do they want to include it as part of their life? And then you have VCs. VCs are probably the least creative people in the world, right? They have a matrix, and then they're like, okay, are they this, and that? And so for folks out there, don't get signals from VCs. Do not, right? As soon as you show a revenue, the VC gets excited. They just have zero imagination. I have a very and I've seen like because what you said like about, hey, these are early adopters and so forth, right? How about Ring, right, which was bought by Amazon? How about many of these companies that went somewhere, right? So clearly that argument is null, is zero, right? Means nothing.
yeah.
And I've seen lots of arguments that now sort of have lost respect for VCs. I understand what they're doing. They're trying to make sure that they make money, and so when they go through the checklist and they say, "What's your revenue? What's your fine?" That's good. But as far as futurists, like seeing what's coming next, they're not, right? It's people like you and the innovators who try things and fail and succeed and so on. But anyway, that's my point and my bias. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we can go on that tangent because there's a lot more. There was a lot of that. I was running up and down Sand Hill Road, probably a year or two after that Kickstarter, trying to raise funds, and no one was talking about the echo, or they were
Yeah,
saying, yeah, why would I use my voice when I could just go over and flip a light switch?
right,
That
right.
was kind of, and
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
it was,
I think the
yeah,
message I want to send out is VCs are good for certain things. They are not good for validating your idea. Really, they're not, right? They don't have vision. It's you, people like you, who have vision, who can see things into the future, who try things out. And the fact that you had a very small minority of Kickstarter projects actually go anywhere, that you had actually such an adoption, means something, right? Because any product is going to have early adopters, and then those early adopters are going to spark the second, right? And so
yeah.
on. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it was in fact, even afterwards. I mean, we got after our Kickstarter, we put on pre-orders afterwards, and we got at least the equivalent orders, from directly from our website for
Mhm.
Ubi. So there was quite a bit of interest there. Our I don't think convincing our challenge wasn't convincing people that this is an interesting product to use and purchase. There was definitely demand for it. I mean, the biggest barrier was getting it to a price point where we could still make money on hardware, which was
Yeah.
required several iterations of the product and funding that we didn't have.
Hardware is hard. It's very, very
Yeah.
hard, actually. Very hard. Before we get to the, I want to go to phase two, which is execution, right? Which is always harder than anything else, right? It's coming up with the idea and all that. It was hard, but then when you want to execute, that, tell me about that. Tell me about the execution. But before we go there, let me just ask you. When we go after that, I just want to get to like lessons learned from all of that. So lessons learned about the first phase and lessons learned about the second phase. But go ahead. Phase two. Let's call it phase two. It's when the grunt work begins.
Yeah, so after the excitement of the Kickstarter campaign started to wane, in fact, before even the end of the Kickstarter campaign, we were sitting down looking at ourselves, realizing we have no clue how to build this thing. What did we do? And this is why are we getting this quote for this amount when we only raised this amount? And we slowly the horror started to dawn on us of what have we done. From the exterior, it looks like, oh, wow, what an amazing exciting Kickstarter project, and from we were just like, oh, now we got two full-time jobs, and this is really scary. So and we have a fuse under our under us. Like that was lit because we put up deadlines on when we're going to ship. And we ourselves were Kickstarter backers, so we wanted to get what we
Mhm.
what we ordered, and we had lots of people now, very engaged audience, both positive and negative, who were
Yep.
following us. So initially, I mean, the idea of the Ubi was a convergence of several technologies, right? And that's what made it possible to launch it at the time that
Mhm.
were build it at the time we thought we could build it. One of them was just the Wi-Fi chips coming down in cost. The fact that we had Android was becoming more ubiquitous in the sense that you could use it in things other than phones.
Mhm.
Um, and even hardware manufacturing was coming down. There was more. We could find someone local to Toronto where we could build prototypes. So there were a lot of things that were coming together. And initially, our thought was, at that time, Android had allowed for speech to text, embedded speech to text. They call it voice typing. And in fact, Google I/O, I think 2012, they had offline speech to text, which was really exciting
Yeah.
because we had wanted to, we were thinking we could potentially use that. The other thing is that there was Google Now had just come out,
Mhm.
which was you could start to ask Google questions and get audio responses back. So get spoken responses back, like what's the weather? There was no Hey Google trigger, but
Mhm.
you could press a button. So there
Yeah.
were all little things that we could potentially play with, and we thought this is a piece of cake. We're going to create basically a headless Android device that can access Google services, and we're good to go. And slowly we learned that that was not happening. That there was a bunch of challenges that had like the tree of functionality, the tree of challenges started to blossom as well. So we ended up having to deal with one is how are we going to wake up the device? What's the wake up word going to be, and how are we going to uh, engage with it? How are we going to do speech to text? How are we going to figure out what the person wants to do? Once we get that text back, how are we going to do text to speech? How are we going to build rules? How are we going to make sure the device is connected? Um, how do we do headless setup of a device? Um, how do you register a device on a portal? And all of those things are huge problems that we
Yep.
had to. And then how do we integrate, because we promised during our campaign we were going to integrate with other devices as well, like smart things. So like how are we going to take our portal and make it connect to smart things so you can turn your lights on and off by voice. So that was like we were freaking out. So and of course we had to deliver a hardware device. So we ended up kind of breaking it apart into different pieces. And there was this other little thing called Farfield voice interaction that people really didn't think about too much, and neither did we.
Which is probably the hardest problem of them all, maybe.
Yeah,
Could
yeah.
be.
It's
Well, hang on, let me pause. Let me just show folks what this thing looks like.
oh, there you go.
There it is. This is this is a historical artifact. I can plug it against the wall, right? I can actually, right there, I can put it here.
That's so you can switch out to different. Of
Yep.
course, we offered worldwide shipping on a first time release,
Yeah.
$10 extra. So the
Right.
reason that plug was in order to be able to accommodate worldwide,
Yep.
voltages. Um,
So clearly, this was not an MVP. All right. Like an MVP could have been. It's not worldwide, right? It does only two or three things, which is what the Echo folks did, right? There's like,
yeah,
did two things, or was it four things, right? Weather, time, ask a question, and I don't know, music, right?
yeah.
Um, this thing was overly ambitious. I think one of the lessons that I have learned in the hard way is, think about this, the tiniest of all MVPs possible, as long as minimal, as long as viable with V right there.
Yes.
Anyway, so wanted people to see this.
Yeah.
Probably, you know, if I were to put it in eBay, it will bring me $10,000.
In
That
that
won't.
case, let me know, and then I'll wait till that's done before putting mine on the market.
No, this is gonna stay.
Yeah,
Actually, this
no,
is actually I love because it's a really well designed. It's nice and and it's beautiful.
we had gone to a one of the things that we had to do was industrial design of the case,
Yeah.
and getting some designs for it. Turns out there's I think it's tryptophobia or something like that. It's a fear of closely placed holes, and it's
What is that?
I think it's tryptophobia. I think it,
Uh-huh.
or but like people get very turned off by looking at a lotus flower, like the lotus flowers that are dried out, kind
Really?
of. Yeah, so we only realized that after the fact when we put that grill on. The grill has zero functionality. In fact, the idea was that it would look like a speaker, although of course we put two speakers, a left and a right, because that's how we thought speakers worked, right?
Well, for me,
So
it looks good. Looks good. But and again, just to show you that this was not an MVP. You have here,
yeah,
right? What is it? A
you,
USB port, right?
USB, yeah, you could
Yeah.
power it.
You
The
can
we
power it. Yeah.
Yeah, some versions of the firmware we actually enabled audio output, so it could function like what was it, the Echo Link or something like that,
Hmm.
where you have the ability to do voice in, and then kind of use different
Hmm.
speakers. So you could use different speakers to
Yeah.
output it.
So
Um,
if you had nicked this thing, meaning you didn't worry about it, and this thing, right? You would have saved you cycles, right?
oh goodness, it would have saved us
Right.
huge. One speaker, changed. There's so many. Let's say that was version one, and
This was version one, right?
yeah,
This
yeah.
version one, right? Anyway, again, for me, the lesson is, all none of these were necessary
Yeah.
in this, right? The
Well,
most exciting thing is you can plug it, you can talk to it, and then version two maybe will have one. I mean,
well,
even today, the Echo doesn't have an HDMI.
well, that the big thing, one of the things that drove
Right.
our whatever product management process we had was we made promises on Kickstarter. We were going to do everything we could in order to fulfill those promises. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
something that was incredibly important to us, that we fulfill.
yep,
So even if it meant creating a platypus of a product.
yeah,
So
yeah. But this is before promising to the market to make sure that it is an MVP, because once it goes out, you can see whether really people want any of those things. Right. Anyway, go on.
So
Yeah.
we slowly started to fill in the slots that we needed to fill in. We ended up talking to it was, I think, Sensory was doing the speech to trigger word. So we did okay Ubi. We got that. We found we could do embedded trigger. We ended up finding we were able to use Google for doing the speech to text. There was an API for Android devices. I think it's been discontinued, but even
Was it
only
cloud based or was it embedded?
cloud based.
Cloud
Yeah.
based. Yeah.
I mean, we looked at Nuance, we looked at tons of other companies, but that was available, not as an API, general API, but through Android devices. You could use that.
Did you
Um,
have to pay anything? No, it was
Not at the
okay.
time. That was the big. That
Mhm.
was the big. The
Yeah,
big plus at the time, because
uh,
there were none of these APIs. Nothing. There was no Lex. There was no
mhm.
Cloud Engine or anything along. Nuance had something, but you had to pay for it. Um, so then there was the NLU, and we ended up taking open source NLU, and we found incredibly bright student actually who spent a summer basically taking as the Stanford core NLP and making our own version of it.
Nice.
Um, and we built a rules engine around it. So, and then we started to integrate with other, with all of the companies that we said we were going to integrate with, and we created an open API to connect to it. And there was basically 90% of the functionality that we wanted to deliver. We were able to do it. Then we actually did text to speech. We had used Ivona for it, and that was, I think, afterwards they were acquired by Amazon and eventually turned into Poly. So
Yep.
but at that time we that was embedded. um, yeah, and so all of these pieces started to cut. We started to get the first version out of the hardware. Worked on audio codecs and microphone placement and these little rubber gaskets to shield the microphones from the speakers. So there was no acoustic echo cancellation, so we had to try to isolate it. We started working on the applications for it. So there was a huge I think it was not voice bots, voice genie. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the exact name, but there was a not voice genie, no, but that's a different company. But
Mhm.
there was a company that had created a question answer bot,
Is it with
and
that AI? No.
it wasn't with .ai. No,
Mhm.
no, no. This was a different company. It was kind of it was a regular expression based system. So we used our NLU to detect whether it was a question. Actually, we internally we called it our garbage bin. If we couldn't figure out the answer, and
Mhm.
we didn't get an intent, we sent it out to that service, and
Do you
that
think
service.
that you could have done with just keyword spotting?
Uh, no, I don't think we could have got away with just.
Like the weather? Okay, it was weather. You
Yeah,
things like slots for city names, stuff like
we
that.
yeah we worked, yeah, we had to we did build kind of the NLU, so we were trying to do intents, not keyword, but we were able to build it out, and it was May, I think, less than a year after our campaign, so about 10, yeah, within 10 months we had our first kind of prototype device in a backer's hands, and that
Hmm.
was it was
Wow,
it was
amazing.
long. I mean, that was still 3 months later than we had expected to ship out to our
Not
early
3 years
backers.
later, because I've seen projects where it's
Yeah,
3 years later, or they just don't deliver anything.
yeah.
They move on.
It was a University of Toronto student who he was doing his PhD in math, and he took it home and he's asked it the weather, and he plugged it in. We walked through the setup with him. It was a lot. There was a lot of hand holding,
Hmm.
um, but then he ended up. Yeah, he. We returned it the next day. We took it back from him, but we used that to kind of build on the setup experience, because there
Yep.
were there were many things that could brick the device. Like if there's no screen, if something goes wrong, it's dead. So
Hmm.
um, but the real kind of, so we continued through in the summer, about a year or so after our launch. We End of August 2013, I remember, we gathered a bunch of early backers from the Toronto area into the manufacturing facility where we were working on, and we did we actually distributed a bunch of UBIs, and we walked them through the setup of it, how it's going to work and what it should do, and then we had pizza for it. We gave them a presentation. We sent them on their way, and we waited, and sure enough, we saw our portal. We could see devices come online, and we're like, first device came online, like someone set it up
Actually did it.
properly.
Hmm.
And then another device came online, and they're asking, like, one person would ask the weather and it actually got the answer right, or one person asked the time and it got the time right. I don't know if we had music at that point, but they were going, things were working. Yes, it was also not understanding things, and they were asking a bunch of times, and we're like, what's that all about? And we didn't have recording capability to listen in and hear what the audio was.
Hmm.
at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
then someone went on and they started asking the worst possible things you could ask an electronic device. Like, I can't repeat it, but I learned a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
from that particular individual who was apparently very lonely. And so
Yeah, they are useful.
yeah, that was like within the first group of distributing the devices. So from that we started to 2013 into 2014 we started to ship out the devices, and in fact we got up we launched a kind of another campaign. We still call them like a beta campaign,
Mm-hmm.
not on Kickstarter, but just
Mm-hmm.
to our own users, getting things out. And this was this is how we started to ship the devices. So this takes us to the, this is the pre-Echo era. So it takes us to
Yes,
the
sir.
end of the pre-Echo era.